Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Live It Up, Home Edition. This is the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We talk about health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life that really feels good, because after all, that's what we want. We want to feel good. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher. Amy is out today, but today on the show, we're going to be taking the opportunity to talk with Stephanie Vichinsky from MethodK9. Her husband and her founded a company called MethodK9, and it's all about taking on any size dog, any breed dog, and any dog with any challenge. And you see, this is going to be such an important conversation because every year in our country, there are just shy of about 900,000 dogs that are euthanized. You see, people frequently get dogs for the companionship, but soon realize that it requires a lot of effort, and it results in the owners experiencing a lot of fears and frustrations and challenges. And so if you are an owner of a dog that is experiencing some fears and frustrations and challenges and not sure how to handle your dog, this conversation is for you. This is a message of hope. And with that, let's get to the interview. Stephanie Vichinsky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Fletcher. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So as I just shared with you, what you are doing has made a huge difference for our family and the training of our dog. And I really just want my viewers and listeners to see with this, what's possible for their dogs. But before we get to all of that, we always start off with a couple wins, because I believe in the practice of feeling good. So what have you got for us? What are a couple of wins, or what's going well in your life?
Well, we're a dog training company, and we've grown very quickly over the last 4 years. And one really big win is that we didn't know the pandemic was coming, and we had a lot of online classes in the works, but we hadn't launched them yet. So we were doing a lot of editing and stuff like that. And when the pandemic hit, we kind of saw our sales drop, like with a lot of other people, because people weren't traveling and doing that sort of stuff. We were able to launch our online classes. And so last year alone, we had about 3,500 people register for our online classes. So that really, boosted our business a lot during kind of a scary time. So that's definitely a big win for us. Second win is, so we rehabilitate aggressive dogs. That's what we do. And we're primarily all female company. And so my husband's the only male in our company, but all of our trainers and assistant trainers, including myself, are all female. And we deal with, some of the most extreme dogs all over the country. And we recently had a 200-pound human aggressive mastiff that checked in for board and train. His name was Goose. And I don't know if I've ever worked a dog that big. I actually think he was a little over 200 pounds. And so I'm a $125 on a good day. And so dealing with a dog that's highly aggressive towards people and highly aggressive towards the trainer that's trying to train them was something where we had to get very creative. We don't have the luxury of, physical strength to be able to kind of control these dogs a little bit more. So we had to get very creative with how we did everything to make sure that all of our staff remained safe, to make sure that I remained safe while training this dog. And we were able to get him through the entire program from start to finish. He's doing absolutely amazing with his family. He's doing great. They've got a new baby. He's doing amazing with the new baby. He's having guests in the house. They're able to travel. They have family members who own an orchard. That it's a public orchard with people coming and going and stuff like that. And Goose is able to be out on the orchard with people now and stuff like that, and really living the life that he deserves. So that's a huge win, just because we're all petite little blonde females that are dealing with really difficult cases. But we're super happy that the family was able to keep their dog and really have success with that. So that's a big one for us.
Yeah, that is a big one. And it's really neat too. It's really a testament to the methodology that you guys have going there, right? Yeah, really good. So I saw on your website a Starling stat, and it's up there pretty prominent to get people's attention, and it certainly got mine, that just shy of 900,000 dogs are euthanized every year in our country.
Yeah.
So what's going on there? Why is this happening?
Well, I mean, you have some of the more well-known problems with the backyard breeding, the overbreeding, stray dogs, people not spaying and neutering their pets. You have all of those issues. Dogs that are unwanted that are breeding out on the street. Then you have backyard breeders who are not really paying attention to genetics and stuff like that. But a very large majority of dogs coming into shelter and rescue are owner surrender. And very often they're owner surrender for behavioral issues. And there's also dogs who remain in shelters and rescues for so long that they develop really significant behavioral issues, and then they struggle to get adopted or can't get adopted at all. And so my company firmly believes that part of that is due to lack of education. So the really clear understanding of dogs is not really out there. The clear education for dog owners is not really out there. When you Google, how do I train my dog to walk on a leash, or how do I train my dog to not be aggressive, or how do I train my dog not to bite and stuff like that, the answers are all over the place. And a lot of times they are originated from somebody who's trying to sell you a product. So our society has really gotten caught up with toys and treats and fancy beds and clothing lines and stuff like that, where it has stopped being about talking to the dog, and it's been more about just providing for their physical needs. Kind of like if you had a child and you made sure that they had the best clothes, you made sure they had a nice bed, they always had food to eat, stuff like that. But you never taught them verbal language. You never taught them how to express their emotions. You never taught them right from wrong. You never taught them how to execute good judgment or deal with things that are challenging. Your child's not going to grow up to be successful just because they had all the physical things that they needed growing up. And I think that's something that's really lacking in our society, is really teaching people how to communicate with their dogs. So I think that lends to that startling statistic is we have a lot of people who are communicating as humans and kind of hoping that the dogs will autopilot and eventually acclimate, but the dogs are living in a world that's very bizarre to them. Their instincts don't really prepare them to live in a human lifestyle, and humans, without the education, don't really have the skill set necessary to make sure that their dogs are successful. And so we start running into the problems where owners, don't really know what to do, and then they're dealing with aggression or anxiety cases where the dogs are injuring themselves because of anxiety, or they're becoming so aggressive that they're scared to have the dogs in their home with them. And just because they were unable to communicate when they first saw those signs, the communication wasn't readily available and the understanding of it wasn't readily available, that it starts to get to a point where it is very scary. And a lot of families wind up rehoming their dogs, and sometimes they rehome them for smaller things that they just don't know how to fix. I see a lot of people who rehome their dogs because their dogs pull so hard that they've knocked them over and broken their hips or broken their collarbones and stuff like that because the dog pulls so hard. And then when the dog doesn't get the exercise that it needs, the dog's completely uncontrollable in the house and stuff like that. And so I think lack of communication on really communicating with dogs, or lack of education on communicating with dogs, has lent to that statistic a lot. And that's what we're really trying to help people with, is learning how to talk to your dog.
And your message really is one of hope.
Yeah.
So what would you like to say to those people who have fallen into that place of resigned and cynical and feeling hopeless about how to handle their dogs?
Well, the first thing I would say is I kind of understand where you're at. I see so many clients that when you own a behavioral dog, it's very different than when you just own a happy-go-lucky dog that maybe digs a hole in the backyard every once in a while. It's very different. Owners of behavioral dogs, I don't think people quite understand the shoes that they're in, but they have to think of very different things. How am I going to have my kids' friends over because the dog is so out of control? It breaks out of its kennel, it breaks out of the basement. I'm worried about the children getting injured. So now my kids can't have friends over. We can't have guests over. We haven't had a guest in our house for 2 years since we got our dog. We can't walk our dog because the dog is so out of control and it's so scary that the neighborhood wants to take the dog away from us. They want it labeled as a dangerous dog. We can't leave the dog in the car because the dog will try to break out of the car. We can't board the dog with anybody, which means we can't travel, and their quality of life sometimes goes down significantly, and they kind of get into a really dark spot after a while and feel like there is no way out. So what our business really specializes in is behavioral dogs. So yes, we train the happy-go-lucky dogs, the puppies and all that other sort of stuff who are significantly easier to train. But when you start getting into this realm of dogs with deep-seated fear, anxiety, aggression, reactivity, obsessive compulsive disorder and such, you start getting away from that simple training and requiring something that's a lot more complex. The problem with complex training, which is what's necessary for these types of dogs, is breaking it down for people. And I feel like that's what our company and our system really does, is it breaks these very complex things down into very manageable steps and very manageable pieces for people. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to expand that complex training into every single service that we offer. So our online courses, I feel, are extremely in-depth. They're very, very saturated with information. And I still feel at the end of the day that they are very compartmentalized and easy for people to follow step by step by step when dealing with a behavioral dog that requires a much sharper skill set. Same thing with our in-person classes. The first day of in-person classes, I genuinely feel that it's a tidal wave for people. They're like, oh my gosh, why did we sign up for this? This is so much information. And at the end of that first class, I say, I know you don't understand it yet, but I promise you by the end of this, you'll be able to recite all of this information and you will be able to execute all of this information as well as I do. And so the clients come in and they learn it piece by piece, and I break it down very simply. I break it down into spelling words and math equations and basic science and everything, so that when people come out, not only do they understand their dog from start to finish, and they really understand their dog as a whole, but they could explain it to somebody else if they had to. And so that's the message of hope that we're giving to these people who are just very distraught and at a point of giving up with these behavioral dogs, because I can tell you it's exhausting. I've owned my own behavioral dogs, and it's something that really takes a toll on you, because the quality of life for you goes down, but the quality of life for your family goes down and your dog goes down. So it's something where you start to feel defeated after a while. So our message of hope is that it is doable to help your dog once you start communicating clearly, even if they have extreme issues. Now, granted, not all dogs are going to be 100% robots, but they can all reach a point where they're manageable enough to be safe with your family, manageable enough that they are coachable. And it's really just about knowing the steps to get there. And even though there are a lot of steps, they can be broken down simply enough for you to follow. So our online courses do that, our in-person courses do that, our private sessions do that, our board and train does that. And we're really just trying to break down dog communication for owners that are struggling with the behavioral cases, not necessarily the so easy dogs, where they could probably make a lot of mistakes and still have a really easy, great dog at the end of it. So
yeah, really, really good stuff. That's what I want our viewers to hear, that there is hope. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this right now and you're like, I don't know if there's hope for my dog, there is. And we're going to get to more of that right after the commercial break. Stay with us. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We are here, home edition, today. We're talking with Stephanie Vichinsky from MethodK9, and you're over in Post Falls, Idaho. Is that accurate?
Falls, yep.
Okay, great. And she's laying down all sorts of good information and messages of hope for dealing with dogs when you feel like they're at the point like you don't know what to do. Look her up online. She's got all sorts of great content out there. Sign up for some of her courses. It'll be a game changer for you, and you'll have that peace and harmony that you were really after when you first got that dog in the first place. Next question for you, Stephanie. I've heard you talk a lot about advocating for your dog. This was new to me. Tell me what you mean about advocating for your dog.
So advocacy for your dog really just means that you're sticking up for them. You're understanding where they're at, you're understanding their personality, and you're trying to cater life to them in such a way that you're being respectful of that. So, you know, a lot of people think that socializing their dog is throwing them into the dog park with all the other dogs, and they think it is letting every single person that they pass in public come up and pet their dog, and stuff like that. And what really winds up starting to happen, I want you to think of celebrities after a while when the paparazzi is just around them constantly. They don't enjoy that. They try to hide from that. And sometimes they eventually lash out at that because it is so much. And so same thing happens with our dogs, where they eventually get to the point where they realize that nobody's sticking up for them. And so you wind up developing behavioral issues by going too far, too fast with your dog. So you'll get dogs that nip people, growl at people, run away from people, or they start fights in the dog park, or they start reactivity. They're barking and lunging on the walk. And a lot of that is a result of us not listening, us not paying attention, us not respecting the dog for who it is. So just like all people, everybody has a different personality. Sometimes you have dogs that are just complete social butterflies, right? They want to greet everybody. But I would say a large majority of dogs, I would say 60% of them are not that way. They are okay maybe greeting, close family and friends in a situation that's a little bit more relaxed for them, but greeting every single person on the street, especially people that they might be a little bit uncomfortable with, really tends to force our dogs into a situation where they need to defend themselves or lash out to try to create some space. And so advocacy is where we start sticking up for our dogs and knowing that 60% of them, a large majority of them, don't really want to be smothered out in public with the paparazzi. So advocacy is where if, let's say that I know my dog is not ultra social, might be a little bit nervous about people, stuff like that, but they're not aggressive or anything like that. And somebody says, hey, can I please pet your dog? A lot of times I see people say, yeah, go ahead. My dog needs to get used to people. But what's happening there is you're breaking the trust with your dog. What would have been better is to say, you know what, my dog's training right now. We're not going to do any petting right now. And the dog goes, wow, thanks, mom. Thanks, dad. Thanks for listening and knowing that I wasn't super comfortable with that. When the dog understands that there is no social pressure, they actually start blooming on their own, and you'll start seeing more of their real personality. You'll start seeing them more comfortable with the guests in your home and such. But when we put a lot of pressure on them to greet everybody, we start seeing dogs that close off. Same thing when we push them to engage with other dogs. So we're putting them in daycare or we're putting them in the dog park, and you see that your dog's kind of the dog that's not a fan of this, or your dog looks super excited, but it's actually really stressed. And it's just like, running around the whole day. A lot of times the dog says, well, every time I experience a person or another dog, I get overwhelmed and nobody sticks up for me. So I'm not even going to let that person or other dog approach me. I'm going to lunge. I'm going to growl. I'm going to bolt. I'm going to do whatever. And it's because the smaller signs weren't really being picked up. So the best rule of thumb for your dog is, if you really want to socialize them, do it in small groups of people or dogs that you can control. People that you can say, you know what, I think my dog's had enough, right? People are comfortable hearing that. Same thing with other dogs. It socialize them with other dogs that you have a little control over, or your guests or your friends have a little control over, where you can say, hey, can you put your dog on a leash? I can see my dog's getting a little overwhelmed. Let's give him some downtime, where you're actually paying attention to the messages that your dog is sending, rather than just saying, well, good luck, have fun out there, where we're sticking up for them. And the dog's really going to let their guard down and be much more open, not only to socialization, but to coaching from you. So advocacy is really critical for avoiding behavioral problems. And it's really critical for helping behavioral problems de-escalate as you're rehabbing your dog.
Yeah, well said. It also makes me think of, like, what we're dealing with is some root insecurity, right? And so,
yeah, very often, yeah.
So we really want to just help. We're really helping the dog feel secure, becoming more confident when we advocate for them.
Yeah, definitely. And you're dealing with a lot of dogs where sometimes it is a genetic component, where they were just born that way, where they're struggling with confidence, they're struggling with anxiety or fear or what have you from the get-go. But then you also have other dogs that have had bad experiences. And it doesn't mean abuse. A lot of people think that a bad experience means that somebody hit them, or somebody trapped them in a box, or somebody, did something terrible to them. But a lot of times it just means that nobody stood up for them. And that can be enough bad experience for a dog to develop pretty serious behavioral issues in the long run. So sticking up for your dog is probably the number one thing that I would recommend for everybody.
Yeah, really good. We have time for one more question here, and we're doing a lot of training with our new dog Jack, and I've seen people train before, or have had a conversation with people who train. They're like, oh, my dog doesn't seem motivated, And then I heard you say something about when the best time to train your dog is. Talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, this is a question we get all the time. People say, well, when's the best time to train my dog, morning or night, or when I get home from work or what have you? And then they say, well, how long should a training session be? Should it be 5 minutes? Should it be 10 minutes? These are huge misconceptions. So training, I want you to think of it as raising your child. If somebody called you up and said, when's the best time to raise my child? When's the best time for me to coach my child throughout the day? It would seem silly, right? Because you're coaching your child through the entire day. Brush your teeth when you first wake up. Make sure you pack your backpack. I want you to make sure you eat your whole breakfast before you go to school, right? You can't sleep in, all this other sort of stuff. Make sure your socks match, right? Are you wearing clean underwear? The whole day is coaching when you're trying just to get your kids out to school, and the whole day of school is coaching and when they get home, right? So with your dogs, you can't expect to have results if you're only coaching at certain periods, and it's a perfectly set up little compartmentalized part of the day that is training. It's not going to transfer. So it's something where, you should be establishing boundaries with your dog throughout the entire day, where you want them to be in the house, where you don't want them to be in the house, how you want them to engage with you and your guests, how you don't want them to, how do you want them to engage with the other dog. That should be an ongoing coaching opportunity. Same thing for, building manners. You don't steal food from me while I'm trying to eat. You don't steal food from the other dogs. Try not to knock over the kids when you're doing all that sort of stuff. These are all things that are coaching throughout the day. And a lot of times people think that training is, obedience. You do it 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, and you have this obedient dog. Well, if you went to the gym 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, and you really wanted to have this perfect sculpted body, but all the time in between there, you're just eating ding dongs and hobos and watching Netflix, you're likely not going to get the body that you're looking for, no matter how hard you work during those 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening. It has to be something that's a total life goal. So things that I coach people on is, forget about the sit and the down and all that sort of stuff. Although that is very valuable, just start teaching your dog to pay attention to you. So I really recommend people leave a leash on their dog while their dog is home. That's really beneficial. Just a simple leash that doesn't have a hand loop, cut the hand loop off the end and let them drag them around the house. As long as you're supervising your dog. Obviously you don't want them leashed when they're unsupervised, but when you're watching, the leash is going to help you do a lot of coaching. So if they're on the couch, you don't want them to be, grab that leash, move them off of the couch, right? If they're pestering the cat and you're like, I can't get them to stop, grab the leash and say, we don't pester the cat. Why don't you go over there and lay on your bed or something like that? I don't want you up on the counter, grab the leash. I don't want you jumping, grab the leash, right? Just start communicating with them in a way that makes a little bit more sense to them. Where it's not just kind of everything's a free for all, and then I buckle down for 5 minutes morning and 5 minutes evening to go over sit and down and stuff like that. I recommend doing that in addition to the coaching the whole day. So coaching with your dog and training with your dog is all day, every day to get the results that you want.
I love it. Yeah, really, really good stuff. Gosh, I can't believe our time's up already. I have so much more I could talk with you about. Maybe we'll be fortunate to have you on again. Thank you so much for, again, the message of hope. And thank you for just sharing this information and helping to educate us. But before we go, what's the best way to get a hold of you if people want to enroll in some of your courses or check you out online?
Sure. So going to our website, which is methodk9.com. So METHOD, the letter K, number 9.com. If you want to actually do some of our services, you can fill out a contact form. Otherwise, the online classes are right there. If you just click the online course link, you can register right then and there. And then if you're interested in board and train or what have you, we'll get a phone call into you. But all the information's there on the website, the pricing, what the services are and everything like that. So that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And now you know what it's time to do. It's time to get out there, be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You do have something to offer this world, and I believe in you.